Good day, everyone. I'm Karen Bonadeo, Senior Director of Alumni Relations. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar focused on admissions featuring Rosemary Hilliard, Senior Director of Admissions and Financial Aid. This is an opportunity for alumni to learn to be effective admissions partners and ask any questions. Please note this webinar is being recorded and will be shared online afterwards. We're very excited for this webinar since Rosemary is such a wonderful partner with the Alumni Relations team, and hope you appreciate hearing from her today. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Hi, everyone. My name is Rosemary. Karen said I'm the Senior Director of Admissions and Financial Aid. I have been at Harvard for almost 2 years now. I started in March of 2023, but I've been working in higher ed for about 16 years at this point, focused exclusively on admissions and financial aid, particularly for marginalized populations. So I was super excited to have the opportunity to continue that work here at the Kennedy School, particularly in an office that's focused on both admissions and financial aid. So if any of you have engaged with us in the past, I have a slide here with pictures of my team so that you can put some faces to the names. But we are a team of 8 people. And like I said, we are focused on both admissions and financial aid, which is a super unique setup for a financial aid office or for an admissions office. So everyone on the team does everything related to admissions and financial aid. And I've got some info here. This is a little bit about what we do on both sides of things. So we are in the unique spot of being able to work with students through their entire life cycle at the Kennedy School. So we're actually going out and recruiting, and I'll talk a little bit about what our recruiting activities are. We're counseling students about how to apply. We build the application. We develop the admissions process every year. Some of us read apps, we're admitting students, yielding them, all of that. And we're also awarding financial aid and developing the awarding strategy for the Kennedy School, which is extremely fulfilling. So we're processing financial aid applications, we're selecting students for fellowships, and then we even get to work with students after they graduate because we manage a loan repayment assistance program too. So we truly do get to work with students through the entire life cycle, which is extremely fulfilling, and it's absolutely wonderful. I love this setup so much, even though it's pretty unique in higher ed. So I think recruitment is likely what a lot of you have questions about today, and this is one of the best ways for you to get involved as alumni. That's really my sales pitch today, is like, please get involved with us, please help us. We need you guys. So I have, you can see, oops, my pictures of everyone. None of us are HKS alum. So some of us have taken courses at Harvard and other schools within Harvard, but none of us have actually attended HKS as a student. So we really need alumni support in the recruitment process because you all have the insight as to what it's like to be a student at the Kennedy School, what it's like to go out and actually work in the policy world after graduation. So we need you. So I've got here, this is what our recruitment strategy is pretty broadly for the 25-26 cycle. We do change up our recruitment strategy every year, but these are really the big tenets that we're going to be looking at least my plan for the next few years is to consider these 3 things with some tweaks here and there, depending on our successes in certain areas, what the needs of the school are, how we're seeing the student body shape up, etc. So our first tenet is diversity, and that is a super broad area. When I say diversity, I mean diversity in really every way. So, of course, we're looking at racial diversity. I'll talk a little bit about the Supreme Court striking down affirmative action, but, ensuring that HKS continues to be racially diverse in that type of an environment is a top priority, but we're considering all aspects of diversity. So, for example, political ideology is something that we're looking for. We're looking to increase the diversity of political thought at HKS. This year, we're looking at geographic diversity. We've done a really big push in the middle of the United States and making sure that we're not just recruiting from the coasts. We're not just going to DC and New York, that we're finding students from other states as well. So we're really looking at all types of diversity when tackling recruiting a class. Of course, we're looking for public service. We are looking for students who are dedicated to public service, students who have public service experience, sort of whatever that means for them. And we've really been engaging with that topic by going out to organizations, by finding employers where students are already working for and building those connections and showing students that there's a pipeline to HKS. And then partnerships is the third one. And this is also super broad. So, for example, we're partnering with alumni relations and with all of you here. We're partnering with the research centers at HKS. We're partnering with faculty. We're making sure that we are not just operating in a silo and that we're actually going out and building relationships. And that has been going really well. One good example that I like, a very specific example I have of this is one of our associate directors, Brianna Gomez, is Indigenous, and she is really interested in building partnerships with Indigenous-led organizations so that we can increase the enrollment of Indigenous students at the Kennedy School. So she's done a lot of research on community-based organizations and fellowship opportunities for Indigenous students, and has been going out and actually meeting with folks and having conversations about it. So that has been going really, really well. This is a little bit about recruitment that we have done for this year, and I can talk about each of these things, but we have really leaned in. Something I didn't share is our team is very new. Every single person who is here, all of us have been here for 3 years or less, which is super exciting. So we've only, as a team, we've only been through one full application cycle together. And the really fun thing about that is no one is jaded and tired yet. So everyone is still super excited to be going out and tackling new things and trying new things. But we're also getting away with a lot. We can go out and we can play and we can do a ton of things every year because we are so new. And so we've been given a pretty wide latitude to try new things, which is really fun. So this year we had over 50 off-campus events scheduled for admissions. This is, I think, the most our office has ever done, my team or any prior team. And that includes stuff both in the United States, outside of the United States, from small individual meetings that we've set up with tiny groups of students to these huge events that we've had scheduled. So 50 plus off-campus events, and that doesn't include any of the stuff we're doing on campus. And then almost 100 virtual sessions that we have run so far this fall. And those range from information sessions, like general information sessions, to specialized sessions that we have done for particular populations, fellowships, and things like that. So there's a ton going on in our office. If you're ever curious about what we're up to, there's a big events page on the admissions website that talks about where we're going. So tons of cool things. So this is really a small selection of some of the things we've been doing. We had 4 big international trips that have happened this year. We spent a month in sub-Saharan Africa. We went to 7 different countries. It was really exciting, and it sounded, I was not the one who went, one of my colleagues went, and it sounded like it was an incredible trip. So that was amazing. I was able to go to Norway for a week, and then we're doing a couple of APSIA fairs in Geneva and Berlin. And then we're also going to be doing a series of info sessions in China. One of our assistant directors is actually Chinese, and when she goes home for the holidays, she always sets up a couple of info sessions while she's there. So we've got some fun international stuff that's happening, which has been really exciting. We have been experimenting with setting up coffee chats, so meeting with smaller groups of students, and we trialed this for the first time in California and Florida, and they were even more successful than I was expecting them to be. One of our assistant directors just, had 2 or 3 students sign up at a time to meet with her in 30-minute blocks, and it went really well. So this is something in particular that I would love to expand to any alums who are helping us recruit. I'll talk a little bit about that. I spoke about the middle US stuff that we're doing. We've been really thinking about how we can recruit more in places that are not just on the coast of the United States specifically. We have had both great success and then terrible success with some of these. So it's been fun to experiment and see what is working and what's not. We went to Iowa, Idaho, Nevada, South Carolina, Florida, Ohio, Tennessee, and
Dr.
Alabama.
Do Adola. I'm listening. Oh, okay. I was.
You don't want to join us?
No, I'm
So do you mind muting
no, I
yourself?
do. I'm in another meeting that was scheduled, but I'll be in.
That's fine.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, if you don't mind meeting, that would be great. Thank you. So these are just some of the events that we've been doing. We've been building connections, like I said, particularly within organizations that sort of orbit next to or within the US government has been super successful. We've been focusing a lot on joint degree programming. A big one is we've done a couple of school visits for schools that were recommended to us by alumni. So I would love to hear from anyone, if your alma mater is a place where you think that we would be able to get great success in recruiting, please send them our way. Making those connections is always really, really beneficial. I talked a little bit about building connections. We've done a few alumni and prospect mixers, which have been really fun and really successful. Like I said, no one from my office is an HKS alum, so we can talk about application policies and broadly what it's like to be a student and advise on careers and everything, but we don't have that lived experience. So the best thing to do is to have prospects either talk to alumni or current students if they really want to have a conversation about what the experience is. So having alumni and prospect mixers has been really fun and really successful so far. We've done 3 or 4 so far this cycle that have worked really, really well. We've also been experimenting with classroom visits, which has been cool. One of our assistant directors has gone in front of several economics and poli-sci classes at universities and had an opportunity to listen in on some of the classes and then answer questions from students who actually have the coursework that we're looking for. So that has gone really well. And then we've also been collaborating, again, this goes back to building relationships across Harvard and other departments within HKS to make sure that we're reaching as broad of an audience as possible. So again, this is just selected recruitment activities, but I think these are some of the things that we have been doing to experiment this year as we refine our strategy. I wanted to talk about some changes that have happened in admissions. So depending on when you graduated, things have been very much in flux in our office. So these are some of the things that we've been working on over the last couple of years that may be unfamiliar from when you were at the Kennedy School. So a big thing has been increasing the diversity of the admissions committee. So we're trying to make it so that it's not just my team. It's not just the faculty who are reading. We're bringing in folks from across DPSA who have a range of backgrounds and experiences to make sure that we have as diverse a group as possible, whatever that means in many different categories, reading applications. We introduced last year for the first time an application fee waiver for anyone who needed it, regardless of the reason. We're not even reviewing the reasons that people are submitting. If you request a fee waiver, it's automatically approved. So we're continuing to try and decrease barriers for applicants. This year, if you haven't heard, we are trialing a GRE and GMAT waiver for the MPP and the 2-year MPA program. If students have completed certain coursework in undergrad, then they don't have to submit GRE scores for us. So this is very much a pilot program. We're going to see how it goes. So far, our application deadline is December 3rd, and I think we have 30 applications that have been submitted that requested a GRE waiver. So it's going well so far. We'll see how it ends up, but we are trialing that. We trialed reimbursement for travel costs for new admit day last year so that we could get more students on campus. We changed around some of our application questions. We added a question specifically about adversity, asking students to tell us about a time that they overcame a major challenge or adversity in their life, just to get more information on background and experiences. We have a DIB associate program. This has existed for a few years now, but this year we're giving our DIB associates more latitude on what they are actually doing. So our DIB associates are our diversity, inclusion, and belonging associates, and they work on helping us to research ways to bring in more diverse groups of students. They run their own series of sessions for prospects, talking about, from their lived experiences, how to apply to the Kennedy School, giving advice on how to put together a good application, et cetera. So they've been a really, really wonderful resource, and I love that they're now running a little bit more independently with less oversight from my office. We also started a student ambassador program this year. So we're actually paying 6 current students to represent admissions. They meet with prospects, they answer emails, they have their own email address, they attend some of our info sessions, run some of their own. We now run on-campus info sessions and campus tours twice a week, and they manage that process. So it's been really nice to have another point of contact for current students. We're also looking at our awarding strategy for financial aid, running some different scenarios on whether we should be awarding financial aid differently. We are not an institution that can meet full financial need for our students. So we're trying to find what's the way that we can best be supporting students with financial need to come to the Kennedy School, while also making sure that we are keeping to the spirit of our fellowship programs and selecting the best and the brightest students to come. So we're taking a look at that and using some data to make decisions on how to handle that. And then, of course, I think the biggest change that is no surprise for anyone was the recent affirmative action decision by the Supreme Court. So this happened last summer. It was Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard. And if you've been to any of my sessions before, I think these next 2 slides will look super familiar. I would be remiss if I didn't at least touch on this. So In case you aren't familiar, essentially the US Supreme Court ruled that affirmative action is no longer legal. So we cannot consider race for race's sake in admissions. This also means that we can't permit anyone who is involved in selecting class to view racial information. So this includes me. Like once our application opens every year, I lose access to racial information. I can no longer keep an eye on like how we're doing in terms of increasing diversity in the class. It's really frustrating, especially for someone who's really interested in data and making sure we're making data-driven decisions. So it's, I don't have access to that info anymore, which is unfortunate. And one of the hard things is we can't even see how we're doing during an admission cycle. So right now, I can't look and say like, okay, are all the things that we've been doing this fall to try and increase Indigenous applicants, is that actually working? I won't be able to know until after our waitlist closes next year. And I've got here on the right, what we can continue to do is continue to value diversity. We can view race as it's presented in context. So, if someone discloses that they're a particular race and because of that, they have encountered hardship, we can consider things like that. We can continue to consider socioeconomic background and factors such as first gen. So that's one reason why we're really leaning into that in terms of diversity recruitment, is making sure that we're reaching wider groups of students. And recruitment is really the place where we can make it up. So just a little bit about some of the changes we've had to make, particularly in relation to the decision. Like I said, we can't view racial data anymore. That is turned off as soon as our application opens. We can't track how we're doing with the class, like even just to, see, like out of curiosity's sake, to see how we're doing, we can't see that. We've had to change our review process for both the master's programs, but also for other things like PPIA, which is the Public Policy and International Affairs. We have a Junior Summer Institute now. We can't see racial data for that, even though it's not a master's program. We can't do it for our PPLC. We can't do it for any other type of programming that could be even remotely construed as being related to Harvard. We have to be very, very careful and intentional. We've had to do a lot of training for staff just to make sure that they're ready if and when there is a disclosure of race, particularly in the master's applications. We've really had to scrutinize our recruitment efforts and make sure. The big rule has been that we can't be offering anything to one group of students that we wouldn't offer to another group of students. We can't limit enrollment in any of our programming that we offer. There can't be, like secret information that we're passing on to certain groups of students. So we've had to be very, very careful in, particularly when we get requests from outside groups for specialized info sessions, anything like that, that we're not providing anything to them that we wouldn't then provide to someone else if they requested it. And then one of the biggest things that I think impacts this group of people is that there has to be a hard line between people who are actually recruiting and the people who are reading applications. So we get questions from alumni a lot, how can I get involved? Can I help read applications? Can I interview applicants, etc.? And the answer is no, because if you're involved in reading, that means that you absolutely can't be involved in recruiting. And where we need the most help is recruiting. So professional admissions staff is the only group that has been given the okay to both recruit and read applications, because we have the professional training to really be setting aside disclosures of race and treating those in the appropriate way. So it's been really tough to things that we always took for granted that we could do and that other people could do, we now have to really scrutinize. And it's been very frustrating and very disheartening. But it's been a challenge, and I'm very proud of the creative ways that my staff has been looking at this and thinking like, okay, how can we recruit better? How can we continue to support diverse groups of students while also make sure that we're operating legally? So a little bit about alumni involvement. That's really the purpose of this session, is like, please help us. Like, please, this is my sales pitch. We need you guys. 30% of all applicants said that a personal connection was their reason for applying to HKS. So that is connecting with alum, that's connecting with students. They want to talk to you guys. They don't care about what I have to say, which is totally valid. So these are some ways that we have had alumni involved both this year and in years past. And I'm also open to other suggestions as well, like where you guys have been through the program, like you're out in the world doing the thing. And so I recognize and value the fact that you're going to help us come up with stuff that we never would think of. So coffee chats are something that I really want to trial. We had success with doing that with our professional team, but I think those would be really valuable to have alumni as well. You know, we'll pay for your coffee to go hang out at a coffee shop for a couple of hours and talk to prospective students and help set that up. I mentioned we've had some mixers that we've set while we've been on the road. So if we're in your area and we're reaching out to invite you to a mixer, and you're available, like, please come, you know, we'll pay for a couple of drinks for you. And it's just a really casual way to interact with prospective students. We always get really good feedback. We've had several alumni this fall who have attended college fairs or exhibitions for us or with us, which has been really well. So a lot of times if there's something we want to go to, but we're not able to, we'll reach out to alums and ask them if they can join, or if it's something where we want extra help or think that having an alumni would be there, would be really valuable. We did something in DC over the summer, and I had like 15 alumni who came with me, and it was awesome. It was so helpful to be able to say, okay, prospective student, like, actually, here's an alumni right here who's done the thing. So that has always been really great. And so we'll reach out when we're in your area and looking for help or need someone to help us attend something. And if you're attending for us, if we can't be with you, we'll mail you all the stuff you need too. Like, we'll send you all the materials and everything. So we make it pretty easy. We're always looking for alumni to sit in on panels. This happens a lot for our events on campus, but we are, of course, in the post-COVID world, really leaning into virtual programming. So particularly in the spring, we'll be looking for alumni for virtual sessions around yield. We also some feedback that I've gotten from my staff is actually they really enjoy meeting with alumni outside of the context of doing so with prospective students so that we can learn about you. We love to build up this bank of stories and experiences that we can share with prospective students, you know, after we have met with you and like been able to ask you questions and hear about what you've been doing since the Kennedy School. You know, I'm always curious from students how they heard about the Kennedy School. Like, that is something that is always really interesting and can even help inform recruitment efforts. So we would love to meet with you, like whether you want to just do something casual, go grab a coffee, or if you even wanted to come to one of our weekly admissions meetings and let us kind of pick your brain, but that is a really good way to help us. Connecting us with your network. I have one alum in particular who's been incredible about I don't know like how this guy sleeps, but he always has prospects that he's connecting me with, and will just like send me names and CC me on emails with students. Has connected me to universities. So if you have met with prospective students or you have someone who you know who you think would be a good fit, like connect us with them. We'd love to talk to them. Like I said in the beginning of the presentation, building connections has been really important for us this year. So if your alma mater you think would be a good fit for us to go recruit at, if there's an employer or a community organization that you think we should be aware of, like please send them our way. Would love to meet with them, and having that connection has been really important. It's always gives us more legitimacy to have that person who's like, okay, like, you know, here's the Harvard admissions office, here is so-and-so. It's been really impactful to do that. This is a lower effort. You know, I know everyone is super busy. So if you add me on LinkedIn, I'm very easy to find. I will often post about what I'm doing, about what the office is doing, reshare that stuff. It makes an impact coming from alumni. Creating content for a blog. We are always looking for alumni stories to feature on the admissions blog and on social media. So we use, I'll talk about this in a second, but there's a way to sign up for our engagement database. And we have been reaching out to folks and asking folks to be willing to be interviewed for our blog. And that has been really great. And then the text got caught up in the bottom, but a really big one that we're hoping to rely even more on this year is yield calls for admitted students. So we release admissions decisions in mid-March, and then students have until mid-April to decide if they want to come to the Kennedy School. And in that time, my goal is to have every admitted student called by someone affiliated with Harvard University. So whether it's a program director, a faculty member, a current student, or even better, an alumni. Like, I really want all of our admits to get at least one call congratulating them on their acceptance and offering to answer any questions, and like, again, making that personal connection. So we're really going to be looking for people to help us with yield calls this year, whether you can call 2 people or you're a crazy person and you can call 50 people. Like, we would love to have as much help as possible with this. And thank you. So I've got here this QR code. This links to our alumni engagement form. You fill this out and basically tell us how much or how little you would like to be contributing, how what you're able to be contributing. We'll ask you a few questions about, when did you graduate, what program, where you live, of course. That's really helpful for when we're on the road and we're looking for support for some of our activities that are regional. And then what you're interested in doing. So there's a whole bunch of ideas and activities that I've got listed on that form, but there's also a section for you to suggest other things. So if there's other stuff that you think we should be doing, if there's some ideas that you have, like, we are all ears. I really want to hammer home that we really value the input that you can give and the stories that you can tell, and just the creativity from this group is vast. So I'm super open to whatever you can suggest. Some of our most successful things that we've done so far this year have been at the behest of alumni. So I'm really, really open to anything that you have to suggest. Okay. So that is the end of my slides and my little formal presentation. I would love to answer any questions that anyone has. You're welcome to raise your hand, turn on your camera if it's not on, and yeah, I would love to speak with any of you. And Karen, if you don't mind calling on people for me, there's a little meeting is being transcribed bar in the middle of my screen, so it's hard for me to see who's raising their hands. So that would be really helpful if you don't mind.
Okay, we do have a question in the chat from Lena Benson. I was recently asked by prospective applicant about scholarships. Is this Sheila Johnson Fellowship created in 2013 no longer available? Is there another similar scholarship or fellowship available?
I'm not familiar with the Sheila Johnson, so I don't think it still exists. Is not on the list of active fellowships that we awarded from this year, so I'm not familiar with what the terms of that are.
Oh, sorry, Rosemary, that's the Equity Fellows now.
Oh, the Equity Fellows? Okay. So we do still have the Equity Fellowship. It runs out of CPL. It's funded in a few different ways, so it's a little bit confusing. The student may be referencing the way that it's specifically on their award letter, but we do still have the Equity Fellowship. I believe there were 18 Equity Fellows this year, so that is very much still alive. Good question.
Okay, so from the group chat, Renee Rambo Rogers, is there a different focus for MC&PA recruitment?
No. Well, yes and no. This is something that we have been really struggling with and thinking about. We did some while we were in sub-Saharan Africa. We reached out to some employers, some community leadership organizations that were focused on developing student careers. And the issue that we keep having is employers saying, well, I don't want my employee to go away for a year. I don't want them to leave me. So it has been really tough to get in the door. So our focus this year has been reaching people early. So we've been doing a lot of college visits, meeting with folks who are involved in young professional organizations, so that we can plant the seed, whether for whatever program it is. So we haven't done that sort of program specific recruitment, but we do keep hearing from alumni do more specific things for mid-careers. We've just been running into that issue of employers not really wanting to talk to us because they don't want us to be advocating for their folks to leave. So I'm super open to other suggestions that folks have about the best way to reach mid-careers. Something I've been thinking about is how can we get involved with community organizations, if there's a way for us to target people through doing mixers and things that are targeted at professionals. We've just had a hard time identifying the roadmap there and how we can get in. So I'm super open to other suggestions that people have about that. Good question. Really good question.
This is from Karina with a K. For international alumni with no alumni group in their country of origin, is there a way that prospective or admitted students from the same country can get our information and reach out to us? What else can we do to support them?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a few different ways we can do this. Like I said, we've had those alumni mixers. So if there's enough, if we've just got a couple of people, it may be a little awkward to put the two of you in a room with a bunch of prospects, but I'm really open to it. So I think we could certainly, if you're willing to work with prospective students, we can always email prospects in our database who are from a particular area and share your contact information, share your LinkedIn. A lot of times we'll tell students to reach out to alumni on LinkedIn so that we're not having to send out your personal info. But if you're comfortable with that, we have also done a few virtual sessions that were intended for students from particular areas, and we've brought alumni from those areas. So we've, for For example, we did one for students from the UAE recently, you know, and we advertised as students from the UAE, and we had a few alums who joined on the call. So they were able to make those connections that way. But really, as much or as you're willing to share your information, we can always come up with ways to do that. What we'll do sometimes now, if we get a student reaching out saying, you know, I'm from X country, I would like to engage with an alumni from that country, you know, we'll look at our engagement form, see if we have anyone from there. If we don't, we'll connect with Karen and see if she has any suggestions, and then ask your permission first before sharing your information. So like, yes, we would love to connect you in like big ways and small ways.
We also have, I don't know if he's still here, David Grasso, who chairs the Diversity and Enrollment Committee of the Alumni Board. And I know we too were working in very close partnership, as Rosemary mentioned, in terms of not only connecting alumni board members, but the greater alumni community in this recruitment and yield process. And so I recommend you also, you know, if it's not through Rosemary's office, you can also reach out to either David Grasso or to the Alumni Relations Office, and we're more than happy to make those connections. So from Santiago Cruejas, hi Rosemary, thanks for the presentation. Can you please share if there are plans for visiting any countries in Latin America?
Yes, we're very interested in visiting Latin America. So our thoughts are, there's a series of college fairs called Education USA, and they're kind of like meh on whether they're actually beneficial to us. They're open broadly to all colleges and universities. So when we go to these, we tend to be very much lumped into Harvard University. And so students who are interested in all the schools will come talk to us, but they are a really good anchor for international trips because it means that we're traveling with educators from other schools, and then it can help us connect with Education USA. One of their big things is helping advise international students on studying in the US broadly. So there is a series of Education USA fairs that are happening in Latin America, that it's not next cycle, but the cycle after. So I really want to do those. That's a long way away though. So in the meantime, we're investigating Colombia specifically. One of our staff members is actually engaged to be married to a woman who lives in Colombia and is very connected with the local government in, don't remember which town, but he's going to be going back and forth there a whole bunch and is looking to set some stuff up. So if there's other areas specifically that you would recommend we go to, we're super open to sort of like these one-off visits, but the plan is to do a big South American, Latin American tour when the Education USA fair circuit happens in a couple of years.
This is from Karina Santangelo regarding the international perspective students. Apart from concentrating in underserved areas, do you have any other regions you are interested in tapping into?
Yes. So certainly Africa has been a big focus for us. That is not a place we have visited in a very long time. So that's really our big region, like for this year that we're trying to lay the foundation. I am also very interested in South America. We tend to see very, very strong applicants from that area of the world. Particularly students who are interested in like going on and working in public service in the public sector. So we really want to get in the door there too. China has been a big one for us. We're trying to increase the quality of the Chinese applicants that we're receiving. We tend to see, not that applying without work experience means that you're a low quality applicant, but we're trying to get more Chinese students with more work experience. We tend to get a lot of applications from folks who are like directly out of undergrad, you know, they're already in the US studying undergraduate. And so that's why we've been doing some of these info sessions with our with our current employees from there. And then the Middle East is another big area for us. But we're very interested in students from broadly around the globe, but those are the areas that like we're really thinking like this is where we need to have a strategic plan.
From Elliot Jung, for context, do you have any data on the number of applications and acceptance rate? I presume it's okay to tell interested applicants that HKS is highly selective.
So we do not publish our acceptance rate. That is not something that we publish, but HKS does continue to remain highly selective. And what I can share is our application numbers continue to go up. Last year we had a 16% in submitted applications year over year. And this year so far, like our application deadline is not till December 3rd. So I hope that this trend doesn't continue because we're not prepared for this. But right now we're 20% up year over year. So we are continuing to see the number of applications increase across the board for all of our programs.
Okay. From Susan Fine, does your recruitment target returned Peace Corps volunteers? Many of them are interested in public service after they finish PC.
No, But I actually met with the director of admissions at Yale yesterday, my counterpart at Yale, and she mentioned that they do a whole bunch of sessions every year for returned Peace Corps volunteers. And I want to know how she does that, because that is not something that I had thought of previously. We do have a fellowship for returned Peace Corps volunteers, and I really think we need to be advertising that. So I've got on my to-do list to actually do some research on how best to tap into that population. I'm not super familiar with Peace Corps as like an organization. You know, I know what volunteers do and where they go and everything, but how to actually get in touch with them. So Susan, if you are a Peace Corps alumni, I would love to pick your brain if you have any ideas on how to get involved. But when the director said that to me yesterday, I was like, that is such a good idea. So it's definitely on my to-do list.
From Jack Chow. Hi, what is the current recruiting posture with respect to recruiting students from the various joint degree programs between HKS and both Harvard and outside universities?
This is a really good question. So we're going to be doing more recruiting for joint and concurrent degree students. This is not something that we have really intentionally recruited for, with the exception of the joint degree programs that we have with the business school and with the law school. Like, we have done some joint sessions with those schools specifically, but we have not done a whole bunch of sessions with other schools. We do go to Dartmouth to see Tuck every year and do something for their current students. But Jeremy Weinstein, the new dean, has given us the directive of really leaning in and increasing our joint and concurrent degree enrollment. So this is something that we've been thinking about how we can best target these students. Where should we be going? Like, what kinds of sessions should we be doing? So it is on our list of things to focus on.
A follow-up question from Karina Santangelo. Have you thought about partnering with Harvard clubs and HKS partners, both domestically and internationally? We can help with that.
Yes, we have. So we had some really good success. We reached out to one of the Harvard clubs in California this past cycle, and they hosted an event for us, and we're amazing. Like, they set everything up for us. They paid for it. It was awesome, even though they were, mostly focused on Harvard College. So yes, we really want to get involved with the Harvard clubs. And we want to do this for Yield as well. So Karina, I know that you have hosted some stuff in the past for admitted students. I would love to like really come up with a model for doing something like that and getting the clubs involved. Like, it's nice that there's a location and there's already a group of people. And so, yes, we really want to get that involved. And I was happy with how things went in California this year, because I think it's a good model for going forward. We also connected with the Harvard club that's in Charleston, South Carolina, and they had some good suggestions for things that we can do in the area too. So they have been helpful for identifying the community resources that we wouldn't necessarily be aware of since we're not from the area. So open to those kind of suggestions as well.
This is follow-up from Susan Fine. She's just happy to discuss further. I am an RECB and speak to many people who are about to finish or have recently finished Peace Corps service. So we'll make sure we follow up with her contact information, unless Susan is comfortable privately chatting it with Rosemary here.
Thank you, Susan. Appreciate that. That's great.
So this is a question from Asudolo Tanda. When do you plan to release the data from the current HKS diversity report?
So this is something that the dean puts together. Admissions, we certainly contribute the data for that. I was under the impression it was coming out in October, but I recognize it is now the day before Halloween, so I don't know. I can certainly ping leadership and see if there's any more information, but that is run by the office of the dean.
Also, follow-up question from the same person. Have you considered reaching out to Teach for America? They have alumni that may be candidates for the MCMPA.
That's a really good idea. I think that falls under the, is adjacent to Peace Corps. Like, those are the types of organizations we can be recruiting with. So yeah, that thank you for the suggestion there. If anyone is a TFA alum, like, I'd love to know more too. I'm even less familiar with TFA as an organization. Like, I know you go and you teach in an underserved area for a year or two, but I really don't know a lot about it. So I'd love to, if anyone has the time to give me more information, I'd love to connect separately.
Hi, Sunanan has their hand raised.
Hi, good morning from Los Angeles, California. Great presentation. I was a reader and recruiter for GSC as well. It's my other grad school. And I just felt like even then and now, you guys are just killing it with recruiting and bringing in the right students. And so I was just wondering, is there any like immediate pain points that you folks need from us? Because otherwise, you guys have it in the bag with the constraints, given the constraints you all have, really finding creative ways, as you mentioned earlier. Any pain points you have now that we could be of immediate assistance with?
Oh,
Thank
wow. That's a really good question. I need to think about that. I need to think about that. There's nothing that pain points for recruitment. I think the thing about mid-career students and getting in with employers and organizations that are going to be targeted to folks who have more work experience for the mid-career program has been tough. Just again, employers are not wanting to engage with us, which I totally understand. So finding ways to do that, and then finding opportunities that are outside of sort of the traditional college fair, college visit circuit. That stuff we've got down. Like it is pretty easy to be a Harvard institution and reach out to a college and ask if we can set up a session. Like they're generally salivating to do something like that. So it's the creative things that fall outside of that I think in the long run are going to have the most value and most impact for us. This isn't really a pain point per se, but I have also been very interested in what kind of agreements with organizations that we can make. Like I've been trying to get in with the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute as an example, and have an agreement with them so that we can provide funding for alumni to come through. And I've been asked to do some research on what other types of organizations, focused on whatever group of students that would be good fits for us to have those types of agreements. And there's so much out there that cutting through the noise has been really difficult because, every community organization and their sub-organizations and parent organizations, I think, could be a good match for us. So if folks have suggestions on those types of orgs, like that would be really helpful too, to think about like what types of groups would be good for us to be funding. I think like Peace Corps, like we have the fellowship for Peace Corps. So organizations like that, Teach for America would be a good one. Anything like that we may not be already considering would be helpful to know. So not necessarily a pain point, but helpful for me in terms of research. Does that answer your question? I think I just word vomited at you.
No, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I think that this boils down to a lot of like what we're looking for in terms of support, and what would be great is helping us identify what we haven't thought about. We got a really cool suggestion. We spoke at the Black Alumni Association reunion a few weeks ago, and someone suggested faith-based organizations, and that was never would have thought of that like in a million years as a way to recruit for HKS. And it was such a good suggestion. We also recently got a suggestion about setting up info sessions and events at local libraries. Like what a great way to connect with particular communities. So things like that we may not be thinking about would be really great. My team is incredible, but most of us come from an undergrad background. I have worked in graduate education before coming to HKS, as have a couple of people, but most everyone else recruited in undergrad. So we're in this really interesting position where we have like a really strong background in going to college fairs and doing those types of visits, and it's trying to bridge the gap with the more creative sort of off the wall suggestions that we're looking for. So things like that are always really helpful. Like I don't remember who suggested the faith-based orgs, but that was such a good suggestion.
Renee, I see
I'm going to tell you, because I'm probably very much a senior, but the way I heard about the Kennedy School was I was working for the city of Oakland, and there was just a little flyer up on a board. And I know that is really old school these days, but you would be surprised that, there's organizations that deal with local governments that it doesn't take as much time and energy, and maybe get a touch point. But that's how I heard about it. And then I then recruited somebody after I got out. And then I've been very much an advocate for how it helped me in my career. So I'm just kind of an old school kind of thing for because the mid-career and listening at your stuff, I mean, you guys have done a fantastic job, but everybody's pretty young. In your mid-career, it's a little difficult. Sometimes you want to try to relate to somebody who's kind of in the middle of the career kind of been blocked, trying to figure out what to do. I will volunteer to be a resource to explain that thing, but I think there's some other, because looking at it, it seemed that the focus is much more on the MPP program and the 2-year MPA program. So, you got to go where the numbers are, but that's all.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I love that you heard about HKS from Flyer. I think that's so cool.
I did.
It's so cool.
From Gary Stahl, it's more of a comment. Canada Service Corps and other countries, Peace Corps works for internationals.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you, Gary.
We have about 12 minutes left, but I don't see any more questions in the chat or any more hands raised. So,
well, maybe
Yeah.
may I make a suggestion? You have various alumni associations now around the world, and they have websites. Maybe on their websites, they can put a little column of how to apply to the Kennedy School.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Thank you.
That's a really good idea. Thank you. Anything else?
Edward, thank you so much for that suggestion. And I want to think more through too, as as I mentioned, as we work closely with Rosemary, thinking how we can leverage our regional networks and our shared interest groups. I know we put a lot every week. We've been trying in our weekly digest. We talk about this admissions form that we posted in the chat earlier. I was unaware of the admissions event, so I think that's a really great opportunity if there's a way there too for alumni to plug into. And we'll be more mindful of how we're sharing that information, so that not only what we receive is then we're also sharing it with our networks and SIGs to potentially post on their social media and their communication channels. So thank you so much. And then Corinna Santangelo just asked another follow-up: how responsive have alumni been to the form?
Great. I think I haven't checked in a couple of weeks, but last time I needed to pull someone from it, we had 182 people had already completed it, which has been awesome. And I've been using it a whole bunch. And my team has, I know the team that went to California a few weeks ago, relied heavily on that. So it's been going great.
Another follow-up question from Tai Sunanan: how about recruitment with recent military veterans? Military members retire in their 40s and enter their second careers then.
So we haven't done specific events for vets. We have done some things for currently enlisted folks. We went to something last summer. There are a few different things that we did, but we did specifically, I enjoyed the one for enlisted folks because it was just a very different population of person. So we've done that, but we have not done veterans. And that is something I wouldn't even know where to start with that. So if folks have suggestions, that would be really great. If there's certain organizations or ways that are recommended to be getting in touch with veterans, that would be really wonderful. We do, as I'm sure all of you went to HKS, we have tons and tons and tons of vets and current service members at the Kennedy School. So that's a really strong population for us. And there's just so much funding available too, that they don't have the financial concerns as well. So they're an easy group to tap into. But if you have ideas on the best way to get in touch with veterans, I would love that. We have done some work with, there's a student group for vets and current service members, and they have done some outreach for us. But that's really the extent of what we have done, specifically with vets.
From Jack Chow: has Dean Weinstein expressed a fresh overall vision for HKS recruiting mission?
Yes and no. Beyond the what's the word I'm looking for? The directive that we do more targeted recruitment for joint and concurrent degree students. He has not expressed much about recruiting. He's very focused, from my very limited interactions with him so far this year, on really learning the lay of the land and not really blowing anything up quite yet and making like huge sweeping changes on what we're doing. I am expecting, like, as he gets more settled, we see how this year goes. This is going to be the second cycle that my team has been fully together, like what our overall successes are, that he's going to have opinions about things and what we should and should not be doing. So I'm definitely interested in that. But the directive to go out and do more for joint and concurrent degree students is the only like specific thing that we have been told so far.
This is where also the overlap is with alumni relations and enrollment and admissions, and our campus partners is our team is working very closely with Dean Weinstein on an overall alumni engagement strategy plan in terms of involving how to connect alumni back to the school, and with the breadth of engagement opportunities we have. And so one of many engagement opportunities we offer is this opportunity to connect with admissions. If your interest is to really help prospective and admitted students. So definitely more to come, and also more to come on just how you can be involved with kind of sharing that information to make sure, like, we know it's important, but like paying attention to it and then making sure we're spreading the word more broadly.
And this doesn't answer your question, but I do know that the alumni experience is really important to Dean Weinstein. I mean, I'm sure you all are familiar. He's an alum. He's a PhD alum, but he's an alum, and his wife is an alum of the MPP program. So he is hyper attuned to the alumni experience and the importance of alumni being involved with things. So I imagine that there's going to be more and more of this formalized process of my department interacting with alums and making sure that we are uplifting alumni voices and giving prospective students the opportunity to engage with that, because his HKS experience was really important to him. I had the opportunity, he came to Norway with me in August on the Norway trip, and had the opportunity to talk to him about his experience and why HKS is so special and important. And, he met his wife while he was here, which is a really cute story. I want to put that on the admissions blog for Valentine's Day in February. So it was experience. It was important to him, and he talks so fondly about his time at HKS. So alumni voices are important, and I imagine that we will get more directive on getting alumni engaged, which is very welcome. And I'm glad we're already doing some of that.
And we have one more question. Similar program schools in the US offer an option to go in for an interview as part of the application process. Is there any thought to introduce that for HKS?
Yes. I think where my team right now are probably all shuddering, and I don't know why, because the operations of that would be intense. But we have thought about it, and my boss and I have been sort of thinking about dipping our toe into this for upcoming cycles for a few different reasons. Like the personal connection component of that is important. I have worked for programs in the past that interviewed applicants, and it was really lovely. It was absolutely exhausting, but it was really lovely. And that's something we had alumni do. We had alumni be involved in interviewing. And then with the rise of ChatGPT and generative AI, we require so many essays, and I know people are applying with essays that they have written on ChatGPT and other tools. We catch people doing it because they do it poorly, and that means that I know that people are doing it well, and they're getting through the checks that we have in place for that. So I would also like to interview for that reason. The operations of that would be an absolute nightmare, and I don't even know where to begin in terms of building a process like that, just because we do have such a high volume of applications and review in such a short amount of time. So we've been thinking about it. Our first thought to sort of like dip our toes into the water and introduce it would be to do there's a way, the tool that we use to read applications, there's a way to do a virtual interview where students are prompted with a question and it records it. So it's not a real live interview, it doesn't get to that personal connection piece, but it would be a good way to test out the process, like see if it's adding value to the application, and see if it's a way that we can cut down on some of the essays that we're requiring. So we're definitely thinking about it. The actual operations of that are the types of things that keep me up at night, but I would not be surprised if in the next 5 years or so we are interviewing applicants, because we're in a new world now. And I think we're going to need to get to that place. Good question.
I just want to say thank you to Rosemary. I love hearing you speak and meeting members of your team. I feel even as a staff person, I learn so much every time I hear you speak. And of course, like the amazing and wonderful questions from our alumni as you know, as you think more and work more closely with your team. We have recorded this session, as we mentioned earlier, for those that joined the call late. So we will be reposting information or reposting this webinar and then sharing kind of some of the links that we shared and other follow-up information. I saw that Rosemary too just posted her email in the chat as well. And so, like I said, it's so important to either connect with the Alumni Relations Office, please connect with the Alumni Board, please connect with Rosemary's office. You know, as Rosemary pointed out in her presentation, like 30% of prospective students and applicants are coming from a direct connection from alumni. And I hear that a lot as well as in my interactions with alumni, that it's really through the word of mouth, even though we have marketing materials and push a lot out. But I always think it's that personal interaction or connection that really, or maybe even like that belief or that faith, right? That somebody is like, had never thought about it, but they're like, oh, if this person's suggesting it, then, you know, let me go for it. And I think that's how we find really great applicants and really great students that come to the Kennedy School. Can we share this presentation afterwards, Rosemary? I'll just ask you.
Yeah, I can share PDFs of it, not a problem.
And thank you all for joining us today. I mean, for the most up-to-date news, please check the Alumni Relations website. It's so wonderful seeing a lot of familiar faces. And we're just so appreciative of everything that you do on behalf of the school to just make the world a better place and, quite frankly, to make us better as well. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Take care.